Alright, in this video we'll see how to create a REST API. So what do I mean by REST API? So your database will be on another server. You will be accessing the data of another server to your website. Consider this is my locally set up website, and this data is coming from the server called REST API. So you can see it's coming from the server, from the domain, let's say uimonk.in. I have created a page for that, and it will fetch the data, and that data we will receive it from the local host and display it into this particular page, which is client-fetch.php. And this API will work even on the, consider I have another domain which is uxmonk.in. I can access this URL, and in the URL you'll find this data, and in the uxmonk website I can use this data and display it. So as a real world example, I have used a weather API, so we can call this as REST API, which fetch the weather information. And you see this is the server, and I have a table called WP weather inside my WordPress folder, inside my WordPress database, and it has the column state and the degree. And this data we are fetching it into our localhost. Consider this localhost as uxmonk, and we are using those data which is actually in the table. We'll see how to use this. So it's a first step towards our REST API journey. We'll be just using the select query of database. So here we'll be using C curl. If you directly use the API in the PHP, it won't allow you. It will give an error called cross origin request forgery, CORS error. So to bypass that, PHP gives a tool which is CURL. CURL is nothing but a client URL, which helps you to get the request or get the request through an API, and we can use it in our code. So this is the CURL. I'll explain it what it does, and then we'll be using the fetch API to display the received JSON format into the representational format of HTML. So we'll see how to do that. And finally, as I said, this is just a select statement. We'll be just using the select query. So for the first thing, what you have to do is we need to create a file inside your root HTML. So let's say I have public underscore HTML. Inside public underscore HTML, I have created a folder called REST API. You can see REST API. Inside the REST API, I need two files. The first one will be for the database connection. I'm not showing this for my security reason. And the second is we need to create this code, which is index.html. So when I access REST API, inside that index.php will be called, and that data would be fetched. So this data is actually a query where we have used this. See, I have added the database connection, and after a database connection I have made select the state and the degree from the table which we have created, and get the result and send the result through JSON. Along with sending in the JSON format, we are sending the header information saying that we would be sending the data in the JSON format. That's why this header is important. This header is really important, or else it won't work. Once this code is executed, you will see a table with this information. Sorry, you'll see the JSON data with these information which you have entered over here. And after that, we need to use this API, so it will act as an endpoint. When I say endpoint, this is the place where you can access your data and display it. Now we need curl, which is client URL. It's a PHP tool, so we need curl, and this to initialize the curl, we need the endpoint of the URL. The endpoint of the API is actually this one. We just need index.php will be automatically called, and this is the endpoint, and I'm using the endpoint in the URL, and I'm passing it in the init. And once this is done, I'm saying this is a cursor variable, and inside I'm optimizing the cursor variable, saying that I would be receiving the string and make it available. That's what this keyword does, curl opt underscore return transfer. I'm saying I would be receiving string, just optimize it, and after that I'm executing the URL, and I'm encoding it into the JSON. So over here we are encoding it, you can see JSON.encode, and in this place we are getting JSON.decode. We are encoding and here we are decoding it. And after decoding it, again as I said, we are sending the data in the form of JSON, and again we are encoding it so that we can send it to our HTML file where we can fetch. So here the process is we are encoding now and we are receiving it, and after receiving it we have decoding it, and after decoding we are sending the same to the PHP file or HTML file which requires the API, and again we are encoding it with the header. And this with this we can have access to this particular URL in the localhost. Let's say localhost, I think the folder name is API, and just client.php. If you enter, you will get the same data which we have received from the domain uimonk.in. Consider we are in uxmonk.in, and we are receiving the same data with the help of the CURL. Now this URL, we need to use this URL to bypass the CORS error, CORS. This cross origin resource sharing error occurs when you try to access other database or other website. You'll get this CORS error. So to bypass the CORS error, we will be using CURL tool, which is a PHP tool. It is also available on Python as well. And now it's simply a code of Bootstrap. So I have Bootstrap CDN on the head, on the body, after the body, and then I'm using the fetch API. So to make the fetch API work, we need to pass the URL. Since as I said, I have made this available on my local host, consider this as an UXMonk, and I'm using that URL. I'm saying that it would receive a promise. So promise is nothing but it will give a response. We will term it as promise in the PHP context or JavaScript context. And I want, since we have encoded it, I'm decoding it with the help of response. So this one is will get this information on this response. On this response, this is the information, and I'm saying that properly decode it. And once it is decoded, we will have access to the data. You can see first it's a response, and then it will convert into a JSON, and then we'll get the response as data. Once the data is received, it is going to be multiple values. You see, it's an array actually. Inside array we have 3 values. Since that's the reason why we use for each, and we'll access individual item. So this is first item. So the first item will be displayed over here. We just need the state, which is this one, and we need the degree, which is this one. And similarly, since it's a for each, then this loop will run, and again fetch this HTML and replace the state and degree, and again fetch this HTML and replace this. Once it is done, we are appending it into the weather data div. So we have a weather data div which will have all our information in the form of HTML. This is what we would be seeing. So if you want, let me just add one more row, just by clicking insert, and you can see another state, and the degree is, let's say, 35. And if I click on go, how many columns we have, how many rows we have in the table? We have 4 rows in the table. And if I refresh in the localhost, so this is localhost API, we will be able to access that data server. So you can see Tamil Nadu has 35 degrees Celsius. So as I said, this is from different server, and also this is from different server. We are able to access with the help of this curl CURL. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening.